Hello and welcome to episode 125 of Simply Tax, something that I really enjoy as your host, and in assisting business owners and executives with navigating the tax world is also serving as an advisor by gaining and sharing insights into your business and your industry. We've all certainly seen our shares of ups and downs lately, and making sense of everything coming at us both personally and professionally, as well as managing the unique challenges and opportunities on the road ahead, is top of mind to many that I talk to and hear from, regardless of what industry you work in or how you work in it. And that's why I'm excited to share with you on the podcast today as we kick off the month of July 2021, a wide-ranging conversation I had with BKD partner Jason Myers on the construction, architecture and engineering, real estate, and hospitality industries. Today, we'll backfill your understanding of current industry trends, tear down issues that are keeping business owners and executives up at night, build on tips and advice for CFOs and financial managers, excavate insights on possible impacts of the proposed tax changes under President Biden's Build Back Better agenda, and cover things like ESOPs, QOZs, and much, much more along the way. We even sprinkled in a bit of fun, with Jason asking me what I'd say is possibly the best question that any guest has asked me on the podcast to date. And we've included it in our Beyond the Numbers segment that you'll find on our Simply Tax YouTube channel, or by using the link that we've included in the show notes of this episode, available at bkd.com/simplytax. All right, now before we get ahead of ourselves, let's back it up and start with a basic question to set a foundation. Who is Jason Myers? Let's dig in.
I've lived in Indiana my entire life. Got into accounting because of a awesome accounting teacher in high school. Ended up going to Butler University and had a blast at Butler. Had the fortunate opportunity to play on the men's basketball team. Had a lot of great friends and just a great experience, great school, and still involved there today. And after that, I stayed here in Indiana, but joined a national CPA firm for about 8 years, and then realized that I needed to make a little change. And I really had a lot of passion for construction and the real estate side, even back then, and so that really fueled it. Stay here in Indianapolis now at this point in time, but travel all over the place. Have 3 boys who keep my wife and I very active. And my fun fact for you, Damien, is I married my high school sweetheart. So there's your fun fact for the day as well. That's a little who I am.
You've recently taken on kind of a new role too within the firm and at BKD. So maybe talk a little about that and what you do now that we know who you are.
Yeah, effective June 1st, I became the national industry partner for our construction real estate group. Really excited for this opportunity. Tim Wilson was in this role prior and set a good framework for what it means to be a national industry partner and how to support our offices. And so it's probably one of the biggest things that I'm most excited for is being able to get out and see our other BKD offices, interact with some of our clients, and then, to be quite honest, getting to interact with some of our hopefully soon-to-be clients. And so you get that great opportunity to travel and learn what's going on in other parts of the country and really support our team. And so all of those things play into it, really giving back to the industry on top of it. You think about the number of associations that we're involved with and having the opportunity, except for this past year, to go to trade shows and conferences and seminars. We'll get that back on the docket for this year, and we're excited to do that, but giving back to the industry as well to try to help educate and give those that are in the industry some of the most up-to-date, best-in-class ideas and thoughts.
Just looking at this new role, the national industry partner role, what's involved in it and how does maybe even it change your day-to-day, we'll say?
Changing my day-to-day, again, probably the biggest thing for me is having the opportunity to interact with a lot of our trusted advisors all across the firm's footprint. And so gives me that opportunity to interact with our Kansas City team, to interact with our Dallas team, our Houston team. If we have an opportunity coming up, I get to participate in that proposal activity and live presentation. And to me, that's a ton of fun. It's you're able to support that team. You're also able to draw on a lot of the experiences that you've had across other geographic regions, things you're hearing about in the market space, and really try to like I said, bring best in class solutions to our clients and or hopefully soon to be clients so that it gives them a competitive advantage when they go out into the marketplace.
Congratulations, by the way. Excited to for your new role here. And but maybe what fits underneath that bucket when you say construction and real estate as an industry? What does that involve? What kind of fits in there?
Great question, Damien. And so I think about it in four buckets, in all honesty. And so we have the traditional, what you might expect, construction. That's one of our sub niche real focus. Real estate is another sub niche focus. Architects and engineers, A&E firms, those would be in that group as a sub niche. And then hospitality. And so each one of those kind of makes up our construction real estate practice. Each one of them is somewhat similar, but also very different and unique. And so that's why we really sub niche those out and focus on each one of those because their needs are each different.
You kind of mentioned there's these the buckets and maybe the issues that are relevant to each of them are specific and unique. I guess maybe in light of the last year and a half, it's obviously kind of thrown some challenges, but things along those lines, recent events, how have they impacted, let's say, the construction space?
For many, it's been a unique year and a lot going on. You think about construction, though, in most states during the pandemic, they were essential workers. So the folks were out in the field, they were working and continuing on with those projects. And so that created a unique issue for the construction side because those folks were still out in the field performing. You had folks in the office that maybe weren't going into the office to follow other protocols and try to limit the spread. But in each one of those situations, it really changed the dynamic of how the office and the field interacted with each other in the construction space. Definitely had a handful of construction projects that were delayed or postponed. And really, depending on what geographic location the project was in, could have also had a big impact. And it was a very unique time for the construction space, as it was for everybody, but even more so, I believe, on the construction side.
I kind of heard of construction as being sort of maybe a lagging industry because of a lead time to being able to get projects out the ground and so forth. Any thoughts on that, on kind of maybe how that might impact the industry going forward, either in the, say the short-term horizon or long-term horizon?
Absolutely, it will. And you think about a contractor, they have a backlog, is how they'll refer to it. And that backlog was bid and won over the last couple of years. So the work that they were doing during the pandemic had already been booked, it had already been scheduled, it had already been started. One of the things that we're keeping a close eye on is because of some of the Dodge reports and some of the billings from the architects and engineers, that's kind of how they always refer to as the leading edge indicator. A lot of those numbers dipped for a little while during the pandemic. They've started to rebound here lately, which is good. But the projects that needed to be bid during the pandemic probably weren't at the same level. And so, will we see a little downtick in construction in the next 12 to 18 months, 24 months related to that slowdown time? But I'll tell you right now, what more folks are talking about is supply chain disruption and not being able to get the materials they need and the inflationary costs that are playing out in lumber and metals and all those specialty trade type items. Definitely hearing more so than we've heard in the past that projects are pausing with the uncertainty of some of the materials and raw material pricing.
It's just a whole nother layer to it, right? Now things are opening up, but then you've got some challenges there. Anything you're hearing on that? Again, like you said, maybe that is impacting starts and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, with all the folks that we interact with on the construction side specifically here, as we're describing, a lot of them, once they get a project, they're going to try to buy out the entire project immediately. So that way they can limit the exposure they might have on pricing changes. Well, and then even when you buy out, then you have all this material. So where do you store it? So some of them have been working with the owners of the projects to try to get offsite storage so that they can store it and kind of work that into the contract language. So those are two pieces that are really kind of playing into trying to buy all of it ahead of time and try to work through that. There's other price escalation factors. Some have tried to insure projects in a different way. Everyone's really trying to navigate this right now the best that they can, but we haven't even touched on yet employees and hiring needs and the lack of skills trades that was there before the pandemic started. I would tell you it's amplified at this point in time that it's hard to find enough workers. And And if you can find a worker, how long are they going to be there? So that retention component is really playing into the construction space heavy right now. We've probably seen more ESOP conversions of S Corp construction companies going to an ESOP or a partial ESOP because their hope is they give all their employees some ownership in the business that'll help with that retention of that employee. So that's been a unique, real trend here in the short term.
If you have questions on what an employee stock ownership plan or ESOP is and how they work and why you might consider one, give episode 55 of the podcast a listen, as guest Kara Benningfield explains how ESOPs can preserve the culture and legacy of a business, and she breaks down the pros, cons, and risks of an ESOP transaction. Well, now you mentioned a little bit the architects and engineers, kind of in terms of the current events and how maybe things have been playing out. But any other impacts or things that you would kind of mention specific to that space?
The A&E firms, they've had a lot of good projects, a lot of good activity still moving on. Kind of mentioned the little dip in some of that activity for a short period of time. That definitely has played out. We've kind of seen the numbers now finally make the turn here in the last couple months, which is a good sign, or we hope it's a good sign going forward. They have also, believe it or not, a lot of ESOP activity in the A&E space as well. Trying to get that best talent, trying to retain that best talent is important for those A&E firms. There's been some acquisition, M&A action in the A&E space as well, kind of consolidating down maybe some of your smaller, more local A&E firms and trying to give some of the bigger ones more of a national presence is played out. So it's been some unique stuff on the A&E side.
So maybe on that topic of ESOPs as well, I know sometimes around that is getting the right fit and whatnot, and the messaging around that. Are you finding though that if you're looking from a retention and finding talent perspective, that the messaging is well received and easily understood by those that are looking at it and saying, "Wow, this is a really good benefit"?
That's probably the number one challenge for the ownership group when they try to articulate that, hey, we're looking at the ESOP, it's going to benefit you. It's not easily translatable sometimes, and how it's packaged and explained. And it can't be a one-time thing where it's, hey, this is what we're doing and here's the story. It's got to be a consistent education process, and it almost becomes an evolution of the daily and monthly and annual process of that company to really educate its owners of what it means to be an ESOP company and what it means to own shares in an ESOP. You can get everyone working together and moving the corporation forward, it can be really beneficial to everyone. But if there's things that are lost in translation along the way, it can be a real challenge as well. It's not for everybody. Let's always, I know that's one of Kara's favorite things to say is it's not for everybody. And there's definitely stories of where it's failed. There's a lot of great stories though, where it's, been very successful, but going through that process on the analyzing and the feasibility aspect of it is very critical.
All right, so we've talked construction, we've talked A&E. How about kind of in the real estate space? How have recent events impacted things?
Real estate space, I think we can all regurgitate what we've probably heard in the news. So much of downtown areas were decimated from the corporate office space, people moving back into their homes or leaving the big cities for a period of time. And really the concern was what was going to happen to the real estate in those specific areas as it stood. And I think we've started to see, the populations rebounding in some of those bigger cities and folks coming back to the office. Definitely the common thread we keep hearing at this point in time is it's hard to build a culture if nobody's together. There's definitely going to be office space and the need for office space, but will we all use it exactly the same way we've used it historically? The answer is probably no. So how can we take advantage of the things that we've all learned in this pandemic from the real estate side? There's definitely been a lot of movement on the real estate side. You want to talk about qualified opportunity zone discussions? I mean, there's not a day that doesn't go by that topic doesn't come up where we're really looking at and helping clients try to figure out how to take advantage of some of these opportunities that are out there, defer some of these gains. We haven't even talked about the Biden tax plan yet. That's going to play into this big time for real estate companies. But we've definitely seen still some good projects that are out there. They're still getting done. Home builders, home developers right now folks, there's not housing anywhere right now, and developers are having a hard time getting the land ready for home construction as it is. So that's one unique, really uptick in the real estate market that others of them have had definitely a negative impact.
Well, maybe we'll pause and insert there on the conversation around the Biden tax plan, and what are you kind of seeing and hearing in terms of the conversations, and maybe how people are trying to kind of, I guess, plan amid the uncertainty that we have at this point in the game.
A lot more discussion around let's bring some more income back into 2021. That seems like a crazy thing that you would never hear your tax advisor telling you. That conversation has come up more and more here over the last several months, and is definitely intensifying with some of the new announcements. We talked about capital gains. Man, real estate is big in that space on capital gains and dealing with capital gains, and the timing of when you take them, and if the cap is going to really, if it's at $1 million or if it changes to something else, really having a strategy that you execute on will become very, very important. And that's why I mentioned that QOZ fund. A lot of those are being set up, and trying to defer some of those gains if they can in certain cases. And then, as I mentioned, in other cases, we're going to accelerate income into 21 to take advantage of it. A lot of estate planning going on right now with, you think about a construction company, a real estate company. We talked about ones that are owned by ESOPs, but still a lot of them are owned by families or single individuals, those types of things. And the estate planning, trust activity, a lot of that is playing into the discussion right now as well, just simply because of the Biden tax plan and what looks like it's going to be coming down the pike. I know we have our newly branded BKD Private Client Group. I've spent a lot of time talking with Holly Ponser, the national industry partner for BKD Private Client, because the tax strategy and the tax planning, we say it all the time, is all very important, but in a time like this, extremely important.
Holly and I talked about the considerations and strategies amid all the uncertainty regarding possible significant changes for individuals and families in episode 123 of the podcast, which we've included a link to in the show notes of this episode. So go check it out. Wouldn't be doing it justice here if we hit all four categories or all four buckets, right? So we have the hospitality space, which it goes with almost without saying that the last year and a half has been very challenging on the hospitality front. Any thoughts on the impact of recent events within that space?
The hospitality space right out of the gate felt like it was just going to be a complete devastation. It hasn't been that. Everyone has adapted a little bit. You think about how you go to a restaurant and get your food, and you're probably doing it on an app more than you'd ever done it before. You're not going in the restaurant to sit down in most cases. I know certain states have reopened at this point in time, but I'm ordering ahead. I'm going to pick it up curbside. I'm going to pick it up at the window. They were able to do a lot of things that where they thought were going to be challenging from a hotel perspective, from a motel perspective. The travel industry really took a beating, obviously, during that time. But man, it is roaring back right now. Folks want to get out. They want to go explore. They want to go to other parts of the country. They're ready to get out of the home they've been hunkered down in for quite a while. And so a lot of funding at the national level. You think about the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. That's been a really big thing. Keith Foster, who leads our hospitality sub niche for us, has done some great thoughtware around that. I know he's going to have some more webinar activity coming up. Some of the larger players in that space have managed fairly well in this environment. I think it's going to continue to evolve. I've been on an airplane quite a bit here lately already, and I can tell you, I can already feel it from the time I was flying earlier on to where it is today. The ones I've been on lately have been pretty packed. So it feels like we're starting to get things unlocked. And I think it's really going to turn that hospitality space into an extreme rebound as we kind of push forward into the remainder of the year. But as we've talked about, the hospitality space needs people, and it's really hard to find people to work right now. I joked with somebody the other day that you're going to get to go to your favorite resort this fall, and you're probably going to be making your own food, making your own bed, and taking care of everything at the resort yourself, because trying to get folks out there working, it's a real competition right now.
It is. I know I've just seen some of the headlines and the things that companies and businesses are trying to do to try to attract people. You layered in a lot of pieces. There's just so much to think about anymore. And I think that's probably the way things go in the industry, probably always, but it just almost seems accelerating, right?
Yeah.
Across all those spectrums. But I mean, are there maybe some trends that we want to, dig into a little bit more? I mean, obviously, we kind of mentioned this labor aspect, finding the right people, but so maybe even starting there, kind of from a trends perspective, anything you would kind of add or offer from that perspective?
In some cases, there's been some unique upfront cash payments to hire folks, which I know is definitely playing into it. But we talked about it earlier, the technology piece of this. I have a feeling that that's going to play an even more important role as we kind of move forward from the pandemic. We have some of this where we don't have maybe the number of employees we ultimately need, but we all have that piece of technology in our hand. And whether you're an iPhone user or whatever type of product you like to use to communicate and all of that, you think about what we're doing at a hotel now. You're pretty much checking in online. You have your key card online through your phone. You can order your food from your phone, transfer money from your phone. I continue to see, or I believe that we'll continue to see that play a really important role and use technology to reduce the amount of maybe human interaction that might be needed on some of those types of aspects. So I might be crazy, but I feel like it's already started to make that transition.
I don't think you're crazy, at least in this aspect, we'll say, but I think especially in perhaps even maybe the shortages will drive that further, right? Because if you don't have the people to do it, then you're going to try to figure out other ways to do it. And the technology that we have, like you said, all have in our hands is pretty remarkable what you can accomplish there.
Yes, very much is.
Any other trends, would you say, I guess, from the construction real estate overall perspective, maybe we haven't touched on so far?
I think we touched on a lot of them, but again, playing off that technology piece, autonomous driving is here in the construction space. So whether it's a grader, whether it's an earth mover, whatever it is, a lot of it's being handled autonomously now, and little robots are driving and all of that. So I would tell you that is by far the way of the future for a lot of what we do in CRE.
And how do you even go about keeping up with the latest on that? Because I imagine that's just kind of constantly evolving and new things coming out all the time. How do you do that personally, just kind of keeping track of everything?
We spend a lot of time in the industry association space. While we're there, we definitely interact with others in the space, and a lot of times that is all different types of companies, whether it be technology companies, whether it be manufacturers of large pieces of equipment, any one of those things. And so we definitely get together, we talk about things that are going on, what are they seeing, and so we really stay engaged with the industry and what's going on so that we can do a good job of articulating that to our clients. And we engage with our clients in those types of business discussions as well, because we get to absorb some of that from them. It makes us better, can lead to some great tax planning ideas as well. It can lead to financial reporting things to consider, whether it's the new lease accounting standard or revenue recognition. All of those things are intertwined together. And so if we don't stay up on those things, we can take our eye off the ball on some of those things that would really help our client be best in class. And that's what we want. We want all of our clients to be best in class.
That makes sense. Plugging into those associations and using those networks to be able to kind of harness all of that. So let's just say that I'm a CFO of a construction or real estate company or a financial manager, perhaps. If you give me, let's say, three pieces of advice or tips, what would they be?
The list could probably go on forever, Damien. But if you ask me to sum up three, we talked a lot about the difficulties in hiring folks right now. So hiring and retention and building kind of your organizational strategy about how you're going to find folks. And once you get them in, how are you going to keep them? That's a huge competitive thing right now. So being exposed to what others are doing, what professionals might recommend in the industry, that will be a critical aspect of what you're trying to do and how you're trying to expand. And so that's definitely one. We touched on technology, and I would say don't be afraid of the technology, embrace the technology. It can be a real advantage for you and your organization. Probably more so than ever, we hear about business intelligence and dashboard, and there's so much data out there on a job site or a project. but how do we take that data and slice it and cut it and bring it back as a relevant piece of information that we can use to manage the business and run the business as we go forward. And so that is one that will continue to evolve. And that's why I think it's so important to embrace technology. My caveat there, though, is what are you doing from a cybersecurity threat? We continue to hear all kinds of risks around cyber. What policies and procedures do you have in place? What safeguarding do you have? And you just think about, Damien, what we just got done doing. We had the entire workforce, everyone was working from home outside of your traditional setting. And that's a huge risk from a cyber perspective. And I can tell you, probably to play off of that, my third one is operational assessment. This topic or this project type component is pretty hot right now because most all your folks have been at home. A lot of your internal control processes, your technology, the process that you would go through to run the business, whether it's cash collections, payments, whatever it is, a lot of those processes got broke in some way, shape, or form when we sent our whole entire workforce home. And so now we're finding we maybe had some redundancies or maybe things aren't as efficient as they could have been. And so I know that our internal audit team right now have been working like crazy on operational assessment. Where have you been? What does it now look like today? And what can you do to streamline and safeguard your business, but yet also optimize what you're trying to accomplish?
We had a quick change that we kind of all got thrown into, like you said, but now things are starting to open up and you kind of return. And so it's a chance to look at it instead of just going back to maybe what you were always doing, I guess.
I would 100% agree, Damien. 100% agree.
We have covered a large range of issues, which probably just speaks to the importance of having, like you said, that, the best in class trusted advisor and the team there to be able to assist with all these challenges, issues, trends, what's coming at everybody. If you were going to kind of maybe leave everybody with a few thoughts or again, piece of advice, what would that be?
Tough question. There's probably a handful of things, but I would tell you that if you think about anything that has occurred this past year, is change is inevitable, and change occurs at many different levels and at different paces. And I think we as an entire country and as a CRE group have had extreme change that's occurred in this past 18 months, however you want to define that. And you can definitely see the environment of a winning culture. They embrace that change and they take that challenge and they drive forward with, what they need to do to be better, to be different. They don't run away from the change. Change isn't comfortable for anybody, but we got to embrace that change and play off of the change and find our strengths to where each one of our contractors, us as advisors, how we can make our clients, give them a better understanding of what's going on, but give them the opportunity to be best in class. So embrace change would probably be the one thing that I would leave our group with.
Well put. Change is probably the one thing that's almost for certain anymore, at least from my perspective. And I'm sure from all the associates and everything you've just talked about is pretty clear.
Agreed.
It's always a pleasure to talk to you, just get your perspective, your insights, and appreciate you taking time here, especially with your traveling and the three boys. You get a lot on the plate. So I appreciate you taking the time to chat.
I appreciate it, Damien. This has been a lot of fun. You asked a lot of questions of me, but I have just one question for you.
I think Jason's question here lends itself better to video, and after you watch it, I think you'll agree. So I'd like to once again invite you to hop out to our YouTube channel and give our latest Beyond the Numbers segment with Jason a watch. When you do, you can also find out things like his favorite food, hobby, and even his favorite piece of construction equipment. And if you'd like to know more about me, please follow me on social media. You can find me out on Twitter, where I tweet about tax at Damien Martin CPA, on Instagram at TaxDad, on YouTube by subscribing to our Simply Tax YouTube channel, and out on LinkedIn. And lastly, we really value your opinion and your feedback and would greatly appreciate rating and review on Apple Podcasts. I'm Damien Martin, and thank you for listening.
The information contained in this episode of Simply Tax is based on data available as of the date of its release. BKD is under no obligation to update this information if changes occur. Applying this information to your specific situation requires careful consideration of all facts and circumstances. Any information provided is not to be considered as tax, legal, or financial advice. Please Please consult your tax advisor before acting on any matters covered.